Prep talk. It's not exactly Jeep talk because the Jeep's not with us at the moment. Thoughts for the week, midweek, oddball things. Yeah. We're going to talk about some things seen online, like, why should you not have cash, or what's the purpose of cash in an SHTF? Would it be of value? Why do people say not to have cash? Why it'll be pointless? That kind of thing. Might get into EMPs a little bit, and I'm going to be pulling out of my head. So stay with us. So thoughts for the week, things going through my head, that kind of thing. The thing that really has been getting to me is I've been doing a lot more online things and joining in on religious conversations. Yeah. Now, with the rebranding and whatnot, we're not going to go religious on the channel. There's another channel for that. We're getting it going too. But the discussions and debates are interesting. And by that I mean the format. A lot of pot stirrers will hop on and make a blatant statement. All people of such and such a belief are following this evil person, blah, blah, blah. And that's it. No supporting evidence. No citations. Nothing. Just a blanket statement. Now, either these people online are trying to get their super duper contributor badge and all-star contributor by stirring the pot, and then they get points every time someone comments. It's interesting. But these people don't know how to have a debate. And they use word games. If you ask for, okay, where are your citations? Which statements are you referring to about this person? They turn around and they try to ask you questions. That's not how this works. You made a statement. You put out a premise. Now support your argument. Don't try to get me to answer a question so that you can attack me or come at me and ask me questions and divert the attention from your initial premise. And this goes more than just religious discussions. It's everywhere. It's in philosophical debates. It's in the right and left. It's a game where no one knows the rules anymore. All MAGA are Germany, World War II. That is a hasty generalization, because you just said all are, and at which point all someone has to do is come up with one person who is MAGA but is not whatever you've said. You know, let's say, I mean, you really want to have fun with it, even though they're the most fascist of all. One Antifa member who is also MAGA. Boom, done. You know, your whole argument has just fallen apart. All grapes are green. Well, here's a red grape for you. That's how we make red wine. Boom, done. Disproven. People don't know how to critically think anymore. Many people. See, I almost got nailed. Quite a few people in the world don't seem to be able to critically think and assess a situation, a conversation, a subject, a verb, a conclusion. Now, the writing format may have changed since I was in college, but you would have the first paragraph of your paper would be the intro paragraph, where you would give a general brief outline. The purpose of this paper is to discuss water systems and how to do a gravity feed water system, followed by maybe the initial spring box to the pipe, flow to your cistern would be paragraph 1. Paragraph 2 would be keeping your cistern clean, how many gallons, height on the mountain, and then you'd follow that with the rate of flow down the mountain in your next paragraph to the conclusion of what it goes through into your house. You know, you would have, say, a filtration system, a water softener, then into the water heater, and then finally out the faucet. And in conclusion, this is why, etc. Your closing paragraph basically wraps it all up. It's as if the ability to do that has disappeared from many vocabularies / mental paradigms. So just something that I find frustrating, because I like intelligent conversation, but it's hard to find an intelligent conversation. So there's that. EMPs. I don't even know why I wanted to throw that in there. And cash. First, let's talk cash, shall we? Some people have asked, well, why do people say that cash will be worthless, that it won't be something we'll need, etc.? I'm not going to say that it most definitely is something you will not need, especially right off the bat. Something goes down, that may be the only thing some people take for the first week or two. But why do people think that cash won't be king? Let's break it down. Easiest example I can give. Once upon a time, a glass bottle of Coca-Cola cost a nickel. The same size bottle at your local gas station grocery store will run you $2 to $3 now. I believe Casey's has them for $2.39. So let's talk inflation. If that's the case, if that same bottle of Coke or Pepsi that was once a nickel is now $2.39, that means that in 1960s money, 1950s money, a nickel is worth over $2. So we're looking at inflation. What causes inflation? Well, when economies get unstable, the value of the dollar goes up, therefore the price of, or the value of the dollar goes down, therefore prices go up. So right now, what exactly is going on with our money? Our wonderful elected leaders borrow money from other countries. We are currently in the hole, umpteen trillion dollars. We pay the interest on those loans. We don't actually pay toward the principal. We turn around, and how many billion a week do we send to Afghanistan, to Al-Qaeda? Sean Ryan did a show recently. You'd have to go back and check him. But I want to say it was like $9 billion a week that leaves our country and goes straight to Al-Qaeda as the elected government in Afghanistan at this time. Umpteen billion going to the Ukraine. And then you can also factor in drones, other tools of the trade being given to support allies or people we're here to help out. If the U.S. were a business, we'd be bleeding money and getting ready to either be sold off or closed after filing bankruptcy. Let's just be honest. Meanwhile, when the Federal Reserve wants to add a few million, billion, trillion, they go onto their computers and create some ones and zeros. That's it. They don't even have to look at how many barrels of oil we have. They don't have to look at how much oil we're pumping, how much gas we're pumping. The petrodollar is what backs the US dollar. And now to go total conspiracy theory, Saddam Hussein was trying to take Iraq to a gold standard. We went in and took him out. Ferdinand Marcos in the Philippines was looking at going to a gold standard for the Philippines. We went in and took him out. Seems like everyone who wants to back their money with a higher value commodity than oil, America comes and says hello. what happens when we stop buying oil from the Middle East, or they stop selling to us? We have to start pumping our own, and someone else's petrodollar is worth more than ours. What happens when a coalition of countries says, you know what, we're just not going to do business with the U.S. anymore? They've been running around being the world's police, and we're sick of it. It could happen. And once that happens, the value of the dollar really falls. Prices really go up. And we wake up in a consumer-driven society. We don't make that much here in the U.S. anymore. And even the parts for things we do make, we outsource. I worked for an aerospace company. And when you were going through the parts that we had, we might have a box of cable connectors. 8 of which were made in India, 7 in China, 6 in Russia, and technically they were all the same component. They met all the same size, weight ratios. They completely were interchangeable most of the time, but they were sourced from different places. I don't recall one ever saying made in the USA. The finished product was, but as you'd walk through, we were using wire from other countries. We were using pins from other countries. Our chemical compounds were coming from other countries. So once we couldn't buy those components, our final product would not exist because we wouldn't be able to build it. And then when that facility closed, they moved quite a bit of that production to Mexico. Yeah. Isn't that interesting? Cheaper labor, easier to get past certain regulations, and then import to the U.S. There we can do the final inspection and slap made in the USA on it, right? We don't produce much anymore. Now, there are some new businesses coming online. There's a guy who is making nano, is what he calls them, very small nuclear reactors. His plan is to be able to power cities, replace our aging electrical infrastructure with these materials so that we can win the energy race. And I get it, you know, the AI computer farms and data farms take an awful lot of electricity, take an awful lot to cool, and I believe China makes builds more nuclear reactors than the rest of the world combined in a single year. So this would put us on the electrical footing. This would bring up our production, not just of power, but it would be a product we could sell. Now, I don't know if he sources all of his materials in the US or if he imports like everyone else. But where I'm going with this in cash is, if we don't begin to produce as a country, if we are just buying as a country, we've got a major problem. And if the dollar collapses, all of a sudden, we won't be able to buy anymore. And that's why many people think that having cash in SHTF will not be helpful. You know, we also look at, everything going on with our money, and it appears to be a slow collapse. We already had the hiccup in the 90s. We've had several times where the stock market has had major crashes. So yeah, there's that. Just my 2 cents. EMPs. I think it's on my mind because a lady was asking for information on EMPs and how they work and whatnot. So, basic overview. An EMP, or a coronal mass ejection from the sun, which we've had several near misses recently, will basically create a radiation pulse, for lack of a better term, in the atmosphere. In the 60s or 70s, atmospheric nuclear detonations were tested, and thousands of miles away in Hawaii, power was lost. The pulse short-circuited the system. The deal with an electromagnetic pulse is that it moves so quickly and fries the integrated circuits. But it moves so quickly that a circuit breaker can't trip fast enough to stop it. So if your everything, your TV, VCR, refrigerator, ham radio is plugged in, the pulse can not only strike the power transmission lines and use that like an antenna and flow right into your house, it actually can make contact through the air. The recommendations are having your critical electronics buried 8 feet underground. Apparently 8 feet of concrete, 8 feet of dirt and rock will negate the pulse, and it just won't get to it. Or Faraday cages, Faraday bags, the whole nine. The EMP Commission did do a report a few years back, and I want to say they said 10 or 14% of cars that they tested were actually affected. I also seem to have in my head that 80% of vehicles that were tested still work. So take it for what it is. Like I said, I'm going off of memory. But they did not state which vehicles were tested. So for all we know, it could have been a 2000 Toyota Camry and a 1980s Dodge pickup. I would like to see a Tesla truck undergo a simulation. That would be fun. You know, we could really see how all the little ugly angles and boxy stuff does. But basically, your vehicle is or is not going to work. Like I say, there is hope for vehicles. There's hope for getting them back up and running. But there are no guarantees. My personal feeling on the situation is, if the pulse went off, first disconnect your battery, wait a few minutes, reconnect it, try to start. If that doesn't work, disconnect your battery, touch the cables together, reconnect, and try to start. Basically, you're trying to reset the computer if there's anything inside the computer to reset. Otherwise, the computer may be either melted together or completely just wiped of all programming. But that would be my first steps. Mostly because I've seen computers go down. The body control modules stop working, slowly die, and you could limp your computer for a little bit doing that before it, finally went. So, anyway, that's a basic overview. Trying to get back to basics a little bit on the channel. Thanks for being here. Thanks for listening to my crazy thoughts and ponderings and meanderings and wanderings. We'll see you soon.